Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the second day of our second online conference for ACSOL. And I just want to welcome all the folks here. I think we've got 53. That's what my reading shows on the lower bar of my PC. Thank you for joining us this morning. Thank you for being here yesterday, if you were here yesterday. I just have a few comments before I turn it over to Janice. And one of them is this. I really appreciate and am really thankful for all the speakers that gave their time and their efforts yesterday. I want to say this, two things. One is, it is such a busy place we all live in, layered with stress and pandemic and everything else. And for professionals to take a little bit of time, it takes a heart, it's compelling, and also it's courageous. This is not an easy subject matter. To speak about it and to speak about it publicly is an act of courage. And I'm just so thankful for every single speaker, their time, and what they contribute to this effort to help everybody in the community understand things, to educate, to legislate, and to litigate. And I just want to say this: thank you, thank you, thank you. I am amazed, and almost every year, when I look at things and I look around me and I say, this is an impossible situation. Every time we come to this point in time and we do these conferences, it just makes my heart feel so good. It gives me so much hope that that our efforts are going forward and that we are getting there. I said years and years and years ago, and this is the first time I met Janice and stood up and spoke in a meeting. It's like a football game. You win inch by inch by inch. You build a paradigm. And, that was a meeting with Frank and with Janice and with, a few folks over in Los Angeles. And look at what's happened over time. Those inches turned into yards, those yards, they turned into blocks, those blocks turned into miles and wrapped all the way around the nation. It's amazing. And so not just for the speakers and not just for the presenters and not just for all the rest and the staff, but also to you who have joined us. You support our efforts. It is all about you. And we just, from my heart to yours, from my eyes to God, I want to say thank you. Thank you, thank you. And we appreciate you joining us. We appreciate your contributions. We just appreciate it. And with that, and I think you're going to really enjoy today. We've got a great lineup as we did yesterday. I'm going to hand it over to Janice because she's going to lay out the structure of what we're going to do today, and it should be an awesome day. So thank you, and here we are. Janice, take it away.
Okay, thank you so much, Chance. Welcome back, everybody, to the second day of our annual conference. As Chance just said, it's our second virtual conference because we had one last year as well, and it's our fifth conference in a row. So the very first three conferences we had at Southwestern Law School in Los Angeles, and that was a fabulous location. And as you might imagine, because of the pandemic and the health challenges that we're all facing, the law school right now is not available to the public. It's not open to the public. So that's why we're having a virtual conference this year. And quite frankly, we learned a lot from last year's conference. And because of that, I believe this year's conference is bigger. It's more technically adept, shall we say. And I want to thank one more time the team of Carlton, Chuck, and Roger, who are helping us and helped us through a very successful day yesterday. So it was, you just never know what's going to happen when it comes to technology. But the fact is, through the planning that those three gentlemen did, they also led many dress rehearsals. So many of the panels had a dress rehearsal, and it's thanks to those three gentlemen that those dress rehearsals occurred. So I'm just giving you a little glimpse behind the scenes about why you're having the success that you are at hearing the speakers yesterday, and I'm sure today as well. And again, my thanks to them. So let's go ahead and shift on to the substance. Some people are, asked, why are we doing what we're doing as an organization and quite frankly, as a movement? So it's really important for everybody to understand that what we're all about is we're about protecting the Constitution. So Huh? You might go, huh? How can I even think about the Constitution when I'm having, I don't even know where I'm going to sleep tonight. My, food is uncertain, where my source of food, the amount of food I'm going to have available today, etc. But the fact is, it helps us all to know that what we're doing is protecting the Constitution. And I do mean protecting the Constitution because in turn, the Constitution protects you. And that's something that people sometimes forget about. And I know people, particularly who are under supervision, whether it's parole or probation, perhaps your parole or probation officer is only too happy to frighten you and not to remind you that you, in fact, have constitutional rights. So it used to be when I know myself, when I would go in and talk to legislators and their staff, I would say, I'm here to talk about the civil rights of people on the registry. And so many times the door just slammed in my face, or they just stopped listening. But what I figured out over time was this slight pivot, I'd say about 45 degrees. And that is this, I'm sharing it with you so you can use it as well. What we're here to do is protect the Constitution. Pause, and people go, oh yeah, you're gonna nodding your head and the affirmative, yes, I agree with you, the Constitution needs to be protected. And then say, after the pause, by restoring the civil rights of registrants. And by the way, their loved ones as well. When you do that, if nothing else, people stop and think that, perhaps there is a relationship between the civil rights of people on the registry, their family members, and the Constitution. So why am I sharing this with you today? Well, as Chance mentioned and bears repeating, this organization, again, we're about protecting the Constitution by restoring the civil rights of registrants and their loved ones. And how are we doing it? We're doing it through education, legislation, and litigation. Those are the three pillars of the work that this organization does. We developed these pillars 10 years ago at the very beginning of the organization. And quite frankly, they have stood us well. So we have achieved quite a bit in those 10 years. And other speakers will be talking about that, including myself later on. So I'm not going to dwell on that. But the fact is, education is one of those pillars. That's one of the reasons that we have this conference, because it's really, really important that we have a similar understanding about different words and phrases that we use. So for example, I heard one of our speakers yesterday talk about recidivism rate. That's not what she meant, okay? There's another term that's very similar, and it's vastly different in consequence. So recidivism rate is one thing, but the reoffense rate is something quite different. And let me illustrate that for you. In California, the recidivism rate for a registrant on parole is over 75%. So what does that mean, the recidivism rate? It means that they're going to go back into custody for some reason or another. Why does that happen? Quite frankly, it's because of parole conditions, right? So registrants in California have over 100 parole conditions, each and every person on parole in California, in addition to wearing a GPS device. So you can imagine it's really, really easy to violate while you're on parole. And if you violate on parole, you can even have something called flash incarceration and basically be returned to custody. Fortunately, it's for a short period of time, but still, that is considered under recidivism. Let's talk about the reoffense rate by comparison. The reoffense rate by a registrant on parole is less than 1%. Okay, more than 75%, less than 1%. That's a huge difference, folks. Okay, so we need to know what we're talking about, and we need to be careful with our language. So when I talk, and I am inviting you to do the same thing, talk about what is the reoffense rate and not what the recidivism rate. Recidivism rate makes registrants look bad, and serial predators and any other negative label you want to throw. But the fact is, the reoffense rate is extremely low. Why are all these government resources being thrown at a problem that has a reoffense rate of less than 1%? That's a rhetorical question. I'm not going to give you an answer to that today, and I don't expect you to have one either. So let's talk about other things. But before I do, I want to highlight two things that were said yesterday because they really, really got my attention. One was said by Dr. Elon Meyer from UCLA when he talked about the rate of suicide attempts. And again, not just ideation, not just thoughts about suicide, but actual attempts at suicide. It's 10 times any other group. People on the registry, it's 10 times other groups of people in the public. What are we talking about here? But the silver lining to that is that this is a kind of evidence that needs to be brought forth to courts at every level and say, folks, courts, lawyers, judges, this is not a mere administrative requirement. This indeed is punishment. If the rate of suicide attempts is 10 times the societal average, then this deserves attention and resources. Another thing that I heard, and I believe this came from Jill Levinson, was she talked about post-traumatic growth. And so I'm emphasizing the word growth because a lot of people who are on the registry and family members have experienced trauma because of the registry and related collateral consequences. So think about it though. How can you use your experience to grow? Again, another rhetorical question. I would ask you to ponder that. So education's one pillar. Another pillar is legislation. We in California and many other states, we stop a lot of bills. And by the way, it's easier to stop legislation than it is to get legislation passed. That's just the way it is in general. But the good news is, again, in California, the two committees, one in the Assembly and one in the Senate, through which all registrant bills pass, public safety committees, they are educated and they understand the nuances here, more or less. They're not perfect, but at least when we go forward and we testify before those committees, we're often able to stop bills. That's really, really important. Second, to get legislative relief. And so again, in California, we got a tiered registry bill passed. Guess what? It wasn't the bill we asked for. It's based upon offense, conviction offense, and it's not based upon current risk, but it's a start. And so I basically am encouraging everybody, every registrant, every family member, everybody who supports registrants and family members to get involved in the legislative process. Democracy is slow. Democracy can be messy, but it's worth it. And we know here in California, we were able one time to stop a bill because 15 people showed up, only 15. Think about in your own state, how many people on the registry? And I would imagine that 15 is a small percentage of the folks on your registry. And yet in California, we were able to stop a bill with only 15 people showing up for one hearing. Okay, so let's talk about litigation. And this is something, it's been an amazing journey the last 10 years, because quite frankly, even though I'm an attorney, I wasn't a litigator. I wasn't used to initiating litigation. I worked for the government. Yes, I do have a checkered past. So I used to work for the government. And as a government attorney, I was defending lawsuits. I was defending against lawsuits. I wasn't used to initiating lawsuits. And quite frankly, at the beginning of this process, I thought that somebody else would be filing the lawsuits, preparing and filing the lawsuits. And I went out and it took a long time talking to other attorneys and telling them what it was that we needed. And most of the attorneys, by the way, just turned their back and said, there's no way I'm touching that with a 10-foot pole. No, I'm not going to represent this group of people, no matter how much you pay me. Until finally I got to one law firm that had the right credentials and experience. And what they said was, it's going to cost you $250,000. And that took my breath away, as well as Frank Lindsay, who's our treasurer and a frugal person. And what I realized is that I thought about how much time would it take us to raise $250,000 for one case, as compared to what if we filed our own lawsuit? We prepared and filed our own lawsuit. So guess what? With the help of my then legal assistant, we prepared our first lawsuit. And it was a lawsuit that, I want to tell you, it was a very steep mountain to climb. It was filed in federal district court. And the judge who the case was assigned to is known as No Mercy Percy. His name is Percy Anderson. He's a federal district court judge in Los Angeles, and that is literally his nickname. And I thought, we are toast. How can we expect No Mercy Percy to issue the temporary restraining order that we asked for when it came to stopping the sign requirement of the city of Simi Valley to put a sign on the front door of your house on Halloween? I know there are worse things going on in the country. I do. I know in some states that there's a sign that's put in your front yard. saying that you are a registrant during the entire month of October. But this was bad enough. And so lo and behold, no mercy Percy did in fact grant our temporary restraining order, at least the part that we asked for, which had to do with the sign on the front door. He didn't say the rest of the statute did stand, which had to do with decorating your house on the outside. So, and whether or not to have the light on your front porch. So I'm bringing this to your attention because sometimes you win, right? So David versus Goliath, remember that. David won versus Goliath, right? And I will tell you that many times we are underestimated at what we can and do in the courts. And so in California, I'm happy to report, not only did we get rid of Halloween restrictions, all of them. So guess what, registrants in California, you can celebrate Halloween any way you want. And then we aimed at presence restrictions. And I know many states still have presence restrictions, and presence restrictions are being able to go visit a place. And they came down one by one. In the very beginning, I believe we had about 80 cities and a few counties that had presence restrictions that told people on the registry you couldn't visit a whole number of places. And by the way, no two laws were the same. And so you didn't know if you're traveling down the highway, Interstate 5, for example, whether or not you could stop and use the restroom, whether or not you could stop and get a soft drink or a hamburger. You didn't know if in fact you might be violating a local law, because guess what? They didn't put any signs up either warning you that there was a local law that prohibited you from doing these things. So the good news is, hey, you're in California, you can go to any beach you want, any park you want. And by the way, I have to qualify that if you're not on parole or probation. So you might have a parole or probation condition that temporarily prohibits you from doing those things. But for people who are not on paper, not under supervision, guess what? You can do those things in California. So the next level of our litigation, we basically focused on residency restrictions, and we only have one case left. So I have to stop here and hesitate because I don't want to start swearing online or being recorded here, but there were some really stupid people out there in cities and counties, including one district attorney who's no longer district attorney, who said, oh, it's okay to pass residency restrictions. And they tried to use an existing law called Jessica's Law as a basis for that, when actually it did not give them that authority. So it's taken us 45 lawsuits. We're in our 45th lawsuit right now. And I'm optimistic we will get rid of the last residency restriction in California. So again, what that means in California, if you're not on parole or probation, you can live anywhere in the state that you want. You can live near a school or a park or anywhere else, that you think is fit for you and for your family. We did these things, folks, for you. Just like Champ said, we're here for you. This organization exists to support registrants and their family members. We have on our board of directors a lot of firepower. As I said, we have 6 attorneys on the Alliance or the ACSOL board of directors. We have PhD psychologists, social workers. We have all kinds of people, the kinds of people you need to get stuff done, to get results. And we've gotten a lot of results in California. I'm so far only licensed to practice law in California, but I'm able to take cases in other states as well on pro hoc vice basis, and I'm willing to do that. So if you're listening, you're from another state, don't feel despair that I'm only licensed in California, because I'm willing to reach out now, especially since we have everything solved in California. We do not, but we have achieved a lot, and we would like to pass that success on to the other states in our nation. So I think I'm just about out of time here. And before I go there, I want to read one short passage to you. This is from a spiritual person named Eric Butterworth, and he has a book called Spiritual Economics. And there's this one statement made on page 215 of his book that has inspired me, and I hope will inspire you as well. And this is it. Here it goes. I am only one, but I am one. I can't do everything, but I can do something. What I can do, I ought to do. By the grace of God, I will do. So thank you very much for listening this morning. I believe it's time for a break. I'm turning it over to Carlton.
All right, thanks, Janice. So yes, now we have a 10-minute break before the first plenary session, which is Janice talking about Smith versus Doe, how it must go because registration is punishment. In the meantime, I will just note a few items. Unfortunately, we have to keep everybody muted in this conference, and if folks could unmute themselves at will, it would be too loud and disruptive. But if that doesn't mean we don't want you to like communicate with each other. So you can, of course, chat. I believe we enabled that, the chat amongst yourselves. You can certainly chat with the hosts. Please use the chat function, the one that goes to everyone. Please use that sparingly. We should sort of reserve it for questions that you're going to ask the speaker or technical problems. You can also send those to the hosts. But if people have like sort of running commentary in the chats that makes it hard to see, questions to the speaker or questions about technical difficulties. So please, use that with discretion. If you want to ask a question at the Q&A time, we need you to please try to raise your hand, but virtually. This is different depending on your system. The reactions menu at the bottom of your Zoom screen should have a little happy face. If you click that, usually you can see a raise hand icon. If it's an older Zoom app, sometimes it's under the participants menu item at the bottom of your Zoom screen. Those also might be hiding under the more option with the 3 dots where it stacks the menu items that aren't in the front. So just take a minute to see where the raise hand function is. If you're on the telephone, it is either *9 or *6 to raise your hand. And once you do that, raising your hand virtually, it'll put you in the line and we can unmute you and you can ask your question, talk to the speaker, all that. Or much easier, put it in the chat. And finally, for the breakout sessions, the first one's happening at 11 a.m. after Janice's plenary talk. We'll be using the Zoom breakout room feature, which is very cool, a little complicated, but don't worry about that. We'll go through that right before 11, the process for joining a breakout room. So, all right, we have about 7 minutes before Janice's 10 o'clock presentation. Send any questions you have to the hosts in the chat, or you can also email them to the conference@all4console.laws email address, which is listed in the email by which you join this conference, conference@all4console.laws. Thank you.
And just one additional request, if you move around or eat, please turn off your video. That way it won't be distracting. Thank you very much. All right, we'll see you in just a few minutes. Grab your cup of coffee. I already did. Actually, it's water. Good to have. You guys are looking forward to the day. I am. Some great speakers, awesome panels. And I assume you guys got the schedule so you can choose what you think you'd like to see. We are recording most of the session. So that'll take a week or so, at least before we get those posted up. But they definitely will come. And that way you can study it and re-listen to it many times as you want. Good to have you, Kathleen. Let me unmute. There, you're unmuted.
I said, thank you. It's good to be here.
Yeah, we're looking forward to hearing you and your presentation too today.
Good.
And Sherry, she's got some great stuff today too.
I saw Sherry, wherever she is. Hello, Sherry.
She's up there in the corner.
I don't
did
know
see
where I'm
that.
at on your screen.
There you
but
are. There you are. Howdy.
I'm feeling, I was telling Janice and Chance and Roger that I was listening just through speaker. I wasn't on video yesterday. I was sick in bed and I kind of listened to a little bit of the conference. So I'm going to have to catch up and watch all the videos later. So
Well,
luckily,
I hope you're better today.
yes, my boyfriend came over and took care of me after he got off of work and nursed me back to health. So
Well, good. It's a miracle.
Glad you could make it today. Definitely. And Joe,
absolutely.
good to have you.
Joe looks like he's, oh, there, he's unmuted.
It's good to be here this morning. Always great to see such friendly faces that have so much in common.
Yeah.
And you're a regular. You show up at lots of events and appreciate you being there.
Thank you so much. I try.
Do you have any worship, any words of encouragement for people here who are thinking of coming to maybe a Sacramento
Marty,
event?
hi.
It is really important that as many of us as can show up, as we say, show up, stand up, and speak up. Yes, 15 people were able to stop a bill, but 45 people show much more solidarity, 145 even greater. And, you know, if we can show up on the steps of the Supreme Court in March of 2023 with thousands and thousands and thousands, that will send a message to the members on Capitol Hill, as well as the Supreme Court, that this is not a trivial pursuit, if you'll pardon the expression, that it's a matter of great concern to all of us. So the very first conference I went to, I was inspired by the comment that was made about the 15 people being able to make such a change. And so that really opened my eyes to what's possible. And Janice showing that video of the dancing man. One man can start the things rolling, and then hundreds, thousands move in, or in this case, one or two persons, Frank, Janice, Chance, and we see what it's grown into. So every person makes a big difference.
And if someone has, say, hardship with money or transportation or something like that, what words of encouragement can you give them to be able to get there?
I usually carpool up with a friend, and I think there's always some money available for scholarships. Janice mentioned yesterday in her opening comments that we had scholarships that were available and still available if there were those that we knew that needed to or that would like to be here and didn't have the resources. So some people are generous. They've been blessed with the ability to donate. But as was mentioned yesterday, if every person that is a registrant would donate $1, think of the war chest we'd have. So $1 is a great place to start if that's all you have to make a donation. Those who can give more are certainly appreciated. We're, as someone just mentioned in the chat, we're doing so much, but we have so little to work with. If we had more, we could do more. $200,000 for one case. Holy mackerel. Think what Janice and Chance and the rest of the attorneys have done with so much less than that. It's incredible when we stop and think about it.
It is. We're a very efficient organization. People think we have giant staffs and many, many offices, but no, we're doing this on a shoestring. So every dollar people donate goes to justice for us. So just encourage all of you to consider hitting that donate button, or even better, the automatic on PayPal donation on our website. It really makes a big difference. You may not think $5 makes a difference. It really does. We've got some awesome plans, and we want to change the nation. And we're on minimal funds. It's hard to do. So appreciate all of you who have supported us and are willing to give sacrificially. Hey, Janice.
Hey, Roger. Looks like we have about a minute to go.
You do.
In the meantime, I am answering questions in chat. If anybody wants to ask a question, I'll do my best to answer it over there.
Roger, since I'm still unmuted, may I direct an answer that I was typing a moment ago to a question? Someone said direct chat between participants is still not activated. I think, at least on my computer, if you'll click on the participants list and then click on the name of the person you want to chat with, it'll bring up a direct chat with that person. So perhaps that would work to help solve the problem that he was experiencing.
Okay, thanks for that, Joe. Raphael, did you have a question for Janice?
I do. Can I be unmuted?
You are.
Okay, great. Well, we heard what Janice has accomplished for the organization. We can't deny that it has helped all of us tremendously. I think that we think too small when it comes down to supporting the organization. What I'm proposing today is to do a pledge where each of us can pledge monthly what we can afford in order to enrich in the possibilities of help us personally to get a better position through the help of the organization, which has done wonderful things. But none of us is really doing anything to thank that, to support that. So I start today with a pledge of $100 a month to help Janice with all these chores and all these difficult things that she does for us. Help. And I ask everyone who's listening to this to follow me and to show a hand of support for the organization by doing also a pledge that we can all see how much we can pledge on a monthly basis beginning today. Thank you, Janice. Thank you, everybody, for what you do. And my
And
pledge will be presented today.
Excellent. Thank you, Raphael.